I'm going to get things started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first Beaver County meeting for the 2023 Long Range Plan Update. Thank you all for being here. My name is Dom DeAndrea, and I am SPC's Transportation Planning Director. I would like to acknowledge Beaver County Commissioners Amadio, Camp, and Manning, and the Beaver County staff, and thank them for their continuing support in the development of the Long Range Plan and the Transportation Improvement Plan, and thank them for organizing and coordinating this meeting here this evening. We are here today to talk about future investments in our region and specifically Beaver County, and provide an update on where we are in the development of our Long Range Plan, which is right at the beginning of it, and gather any feedback. We update the 25-year Long Range Plan every 4 years. The current Transportation Improvement Plan, or the TIP, which represents the first 4 years of the Long Range Plan, invests nearly $134 million worth of highway and transit projects into Beaver County. Next slide. So before we get rolling here tonight, just a couple of housekeeping items. This is a virtual meeting, so please continue to mute your microphone and have your camera off. Questions must be entered in the chat box, and we will, at the end of the meeting, we'll address each question in the chat box. And afterwards, we will post the presentation on SPC's website. Next slide, please. So the presentation you're going to see tonight is going to cover many of the key aspects of long-range plan development, such as schedule, public involvement, the review of the plan's policies and strategies. Then we will cover the transportation planning and long-range transportation plan project list development, including a look at current TIP funding and projects advancing from the long-range plan to the TIP, some of the listed current long-range plan projects, and some projects under consideration for listing in the outer years of the next plan. Then we'll shift gears a little to discuss the new bipartisan infrastructure law, some of the discretionary programs that came out of it, and SPC's approach to those opportunities. We'll have a quick update on broadband strategy and wrap it up with SPC economic development efforts. Next slide, please. So in terms of where we're at in the development, we looked at our vision statement. We reviewed our vision statement with our policy committee and some of our commissioners. We have had the first round of 3 rounds of work group meetings with county planners and PennDOT planners. So that first round of meetings occurred in October. We're about to start the second round of meetings here in December and January. We've had a number of these types of meetings right here. This is the next to last one. We have tonight's meeting, and we have a meeting with Butler County tomorrow evening, and that'll wrap up the first round of PPP meetings, public participation panel meetings. There's a parallel effort going on. We're also meeting with our transit operators. And then sometime in March, from the transit and the highway side, we will start to gather a list of long-range transportation projects. We will then conduct an environmental justice analysis to make sure that the benefits and burdens are equitably spread. That'll occur sometime in the January to April timeframe. Then we will do an air quality conformity analysis of that consolidated list of projects to make sure that what we're planning and moving ahead with meets federal air quality guidelines. Then we'll start to assemble the document in the March-April timeframe, and then we'll come back to you with sort of a draft long-range plan document sometime in April-May timeframe. All on the hopes of gathering those comments, responding to comments, and having those responses and a document in front of our commission for long-range plan adoption in June of 2023. Next slide. So, this is the vision statement that's been sort of tweaked a little bit by our policy committee and our commissioners. It's a world-class, safe, well-maintained, and connected multimodal transportation system that provides mobility for all, empowers resilient and sustainable communities, and supports a globally competitive economy. So when we move forward with our long-range plan update, in order to achieve the vision, as I said before, the long-range plan is going to include a list of projects, but some of those projects will be within fiscal capacity, and some of those projects will be beyond fiscal capacity, meaning based on the funding projections, we can't afford some of the projects that are proposed. And that is one of the reasons that we want to try to get some feedback from you this afternoon. I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda Craig, who's going to go over a polling exercise with you to get us started and engaged. Rhonda?
Thank you, Dom. As Dominic mentioned, my name is Rhonda Craig, and I am the Public Involvement Coordinator here at the SPC. And also, as he mentioned, we had some minor updates to the long-range plan. And you can see the long-range plan, the goals and the strategies that are on the screen to the right. We wanted to ask you to give us your answers for 2 polling questions in regards to the long-range plan. The first question, we would like you to please share on which goal is most urgent for the region to address in its long-range plan. And I will open up the poll right now. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, it looks like everybody is responded. So thank you so much for taking that. I'm just going to show the results real quick, and then I'm going to show the next polling question. Okay, so the second polling question is that we would like you to share your which strategies you feel are most urgent to address in our long-range plan. I'm going to open the poll now. And we ask that you can choose up to about 5. Okay, it looks like a good portion of you have responded, so I'm going to close the poll. So thank you so much for taking the poll. I appreciate your feedback. I'm going to move on. Can everybody still see the presentation on my side? My screens are going funny, So SPC has various ways we engage the region. We have numerous committees and also forums. You can always email your comments and questions to comments@spcregion.org, or you can email me at rcraig@spcregion.org. We host in-person and also virtual public participation panel meetings, which we are hosting tonight. You can always check us out or check out the tip and the long-range plan at spcregion.org under the Transportation tab. You can also follow us on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, or LinkedIn. All our comments and questions are valued and encouraged, and all of your comments and questions are processed here at the SPC. This is round 1, as Dominic had mentioned earlier, of the public participation panel meetings, and you can look for me to be reaching out to you probably in April of next year to set a date in May that matches your schedule for round 2 of the public participation meetings. And now I'm going to hand it over to Ryan.
Rhonda, I don't see the presentation up.
Yeah, it's not coming through. You need to reshare it, I think.
Reshare it? Okay.
Hit the share button.
Can you see now?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
That's fine.
on mine it kept moving around.
We're good.
Thanks, Rhonda. I'm Ryan Gordon. I'm gonna review a few slides on the process of updating the long-range transportation plan, specifically our project list. Also hitting on some background on the funding and take a look at some projects in Beaver County. So the transportation planning process is really a continuous cycle that goes through various steps to produce the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, every 2 years, and the Long Range Transportation Plan redone every 4 years. As Dawn mentioned, the federal requirements for SPC include the update of this LRTP every 4 years. So we're currently working on the activities we need to update our long-range plan and our project list, with the idea we'll be back for public review of the draft plan and documentation in May, and looking forward to a adoption by SPC on June 26, 2023. Next slide, please. So this diagram depicts a general process for the development of the Long Range Transportation Plan, or LRTP. Specifically the project list. And you can see here by this diagram that the public involvement really bookends the process of updating the LRTP. We're currently working on the top row of tasks there, and we're currently going out to brief each county in an open meeting such as the one we're having tonight as our initial public involvement. We will work through our 3 LRTP development work groups. And in Beaver County, that includes SPC staff, PennDOT District 11 staff, the Beaver County staff, planning, and also on our transit side, it includes the transit agency in Beaver County Transit. So we utilize this work group to review current conditions and status of our transportation performance measures, and we develop our long-term needs and identify candidate projects. So SPC will then conduct a screening and a consistency criteria analysis to review the candidate projects, and we will group them into, or we will present the results of that screening to our work groups, and we will discuss the candidate projects and their prioritization. Next, we will develop a investment plan, and the investment plan really identifies it's really a conservative identification of the future transportation revenues that we reasonably expect to be available, and it creates an investment plan in collaboration with the members of our work group and PennDOT. There will be between 9 and 12 work group meetings regionally to come to consensus on the LRTP draft project list. The LRTP investment plan then matches to the projects that we've identified, and then we're getting into our air quality conformity and environmental justice analysis that Dom talked about, and our formal public comment period in May. Next slide, please. So the long-range plan is really a long-term view of transportation investments in the SPC region, looking out to 2050. Within this time frame, a conservative estimate of the revenue that's expected to be available is developed. Projects put on the plan cannot exceed this amount in what's referred to as fiscal constraint. So on our fiscally constrained plan project list, we cannot exceed the amounts that we can reasonably expect. The time frame that we look at is broken down into 3 stages and the funds that we've identified are assigned to one of each of these three stages. Stage 1 is really just the current TIP, the years 2023 through 2026. We also refer to this as the current TIP. In this time frame, we have a very detailed listing of the projects of the entire program. Each project has a phase and a year identified, along with a fund type and an amount in each of those 4 years. So it's very detailed, and it's really what we use to drive the project development right through project design and into construction. Stage 2 is really the next 8 years after the end of the current TIP, or the years 2027 to 2034. In this stage, we look at the total cost that's remaining on a project beyond the TIP years, and we look at the total costs of projects that are set to start in these years. This stage does not include all projects. It does not include minor projects. It does include what we call investment category line items, and really those are just lumps of money that are identified for potential bridge preservation or highway reconstruction. It's just a category. It doesn't have the projects identified yet. And then in stage 3, this is really our large investments identified. We have large amounts of funding out there that are shown in our investment category line items. We also have more of a conceptual view of the project at this time, looking out to 2035 to 2050. They're really conceptual costs and conceptual scopes of work really out that far. So it's more conceptual in stage 3. Keep in mind, we really calibrate this every 2 years when we do the TIP. And this time frame really represents about 13 TIP updates. So we'll have plenty of time to evolve and adapt this as we move forward. And I should say most of the candidate projects are in stage 3, maybe a couple in stage 2, but they're really placed out there as a starting point. Next slide, please. A couple of real quick slides on the funding background. This is really a view of what we call our TIP funds, or our formula funds for the region, going back to 2015. You can see there was a downward trajectory that we were on from about 2015 to 2021. With the passage of the bipartisan IIJA law at the federal level, you can see that our highway bridge TIP is really back up to 2019 TIP levels. Next slide, please. This is just a breakdown of, like I said, the TIP years, those first 4 years that we just got started with in 2023 fiscal year. You can see here that the breakdown of the investments in the region. This is total region, and you can see bridges continue to be the largest investment in the region, and you know, that's in large part due to the number of bridges we have and the condition they're in, and also the federal funding that increased for bridge projects. Next slide, please. So I touched on the impact of the bipartisan infrastructure law, or IIJA, and it really was a boost to the region. On our 2023 TIP alone, it increased our base funding about 26% over our 2021 TIP levels. It really, what it most did was increase our funding for bridges because of a new federal bridge investment program that brought $211 million of needed funds to the region. It also increased a little bit what we call our off-system bridge funding, which is the smaller bridges that might not be on the federal aid system. And it also increased our transportation alternatives program funding, which is really funding for sidewalks, pedestrian safety, some cycling, things like that. At the same time that our federal funds were up, our state funding was slightly down. And that's really in large part to the residual effects of COVID impacts on the state gas tax. So next slide, please. So the candidate projects for the LRTP can come from a variety of sources that you can see diagrammed here. This includes candidates that may come from SPC through our various corridor studies or road safety audits, things like that. Also, PennDOT candidates through asset management, safety, and their operations and planning. Also, counties and city provide candidate projects as well for their needs, and also the public. So the public is a source for candidate projects and potential TIP projects into the future. So there's a list of some of the candidate project sources and some of the resources that we use to develop those. After identified, all candidate projects are reviewed for consistency with the LRTP strategies, the federal and state transportation planning factors, and our federal performance measures. And then SPC will screen the candidate projects and run some eligibility consistency on those, and then we'll share the results with the LRTP work groups. So next slide, please. So some of the focus areas for the long range transportation plan are really, this is a list of the major drivers with that, and it continues to be asset management and safety as the key focuses for the region. With additional federal funds, like I talked about under the IIJA, we expect to have a significant number of bridges listed on the LRTP. Safety has always been one of our key focus areas for the region, and emerging roundabouts as one of those elements. We also have these other elements such as transit operations and facilities. We also look at efficiency and operations projects, and we continue to run our TA program and our CMAC program, which really address head bike and air quality related projects. We also have a focus on local bridges, and more so in District 12, we have landslide issues and landslide remediation as a focus too. So like I said, those are some of the key investment areas, and the process really continues to be collaborative and consensus driven in order to come up with our draft fiscally constrained project list. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea, just zooming into Beaver County of a few projects, I've broken this down into a couple lists. One would be projects that were on the LRTP in stage 2 and have now moved into the TIP years. And most projects would get into this more detailed TIP years through project development as we move candidate projects onto the long range plan, and we develop them further and move them into the TIP. So there are some examples of projects that are advancing there. That's just a sample of them. There are many more. And then the next list there below that is a sample of projects that are on the current LRTP. So we would consider these would be considered to be carryover projects, or projects that are currently on the LRTP and will remain on the LRTP as they're awaiting their time to advance onto the TIP. And then I just made a little note down there about some of the economic development investment on some of the statewide discretionary funds that have come to Beaver County. So that's totaling about $17 million in our current TIP. And next slide, please. Then this is just a sampling again of projects that are under consideration for listing in the LRTP for the transportation, the fiscally constrained transportation list. So we'll be looking at these. We're just identifying these at this stage, and we're in the process of reviewing all candidate projects and getting them into our evaluation. We will be, as Don mentioned, holding our next round of LRTP work group meetings, in which we'll start to advance some of these projects under consideration into the long range plan, and we start to do some different iterations of the long range plan to project list to start to get the work groups feedback and moving things around and coming to consensus on what the project list will be. Next slide, please. So transit projects also are very important to the region and are listed on the long range transportation plan. There's some significant projects in Beaver County that are currently on the LRTP listed, and there's a itemization there of some of the projects and some of the investment areas that are investing in transit in Beaver County. We also have some projects that will be under consideration, such as potential multimodal hubs and potential corridor investments. And bottom line is that the SPC transit planners are working with each of our transit operators throughout the region to review the LRTP projects and identify any new long-range candidate projects for listing in stage 2 or stage 3. And you know, that's an important step, and it kind of parallels what we're doing on the highway bridge side. Once we get into around March, we'll be putting those both of those lists together into one project list that shows up on the draft LRTP. Next slide, please. Interstate projects are funded out of Harrisburg as a statewide managed interstate program. Here is a list of the 12-year statewide interstate program in District 11. We will be showing that in the long-range plan. We will also be working with our PennDOT districts to put together a regional list of unfunded interstate needs also for the LRTP appendix. And you can see a large investment in 376 there, and also I-79, both important to Beaver. And next slide, please. Just a few other elements to mention are the population and employment forecast. This is something that we do with every long-range plan update, and these numbers get updated and may be a source of use in either traffic studies or grant applications or things of that nature. So we always update and refresh those forecasts. Also, we write an entire chapter on transportation performance management, which is really how are the projects that are on our long-range transportation plan going to impact and help us to achieve the targets which are set forth in the federal performance measures for the region. So the next thing is like air quality conformity. We are required to do analysis on the impact of our project list on air quality. We also are required to do the environmental justice analysis to look at the benefits and burden on EJ communities. And then we also do an environmental inventory, and we look at analysis of our projects and what is the potential for environmental involvement or environmental impacts. And then we also conduct a lot of agency consultations, and these are largely with state and federal agencies that oversee environmental resources or neighboring planning regions. Next slide, please. So, Rhonda, I don't know if you want to take this one or you just want me to hit on it.
I can do it.
Okay.
So again, just some ways in order to submit your comments. The addresses are on the slide. And also, as Dom had mentioned early on in the presentation, the virtual recordings of tonight's meeting will be posted on the YouTube channel, and then also they can be found under the Get Involved tab, and then clicking on the public participation meeting box there, and you can find, like I said, the recordings there. I'll hand it back over to Dom.
Thanks, Rhonda. Thanks, Ryan. Before I get started again here, I'm going to there you go. I'm going to talk a little bit about the bipartisan infrastructure law and some of the activities that SPC staff is engaged in as a result, and also talk a little bit about the broadband plan. Just before I get going again here, I just want to remind everybody, if you're jotting down any notes or making any mental notes, you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Just hit that chat button and type away. And as I said at the end here, we'll address your question. Also, I want to mention that Ryan went over a couple of Beaver County projects that are going to move from the long range plan into the TIP. If you have any questions on any details with regard to those projects, we have with us tonight from District 11, John Quatman and Stephanie Spang. They're here. Hi, John, and hi, Stephanie. And if there's questions that we can't answer, certainly we'll get them answered, and perhaps John and Stephanie can help us answer some of those project questions. Next slide. So nearly a year ago, Congress passed and the President signed into law, as we've mentioned, the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law. And as with previous infrastructure bills, the legislation included a comprehensive and long-term surface transportation reauthorization. However, this legislation also addressed other infrastructure needs of and included appropriating numerous energy-related programs, from grants to modernizing our electric grid or establishing pilot programs for new forms of energy like hydrogen and the capturing of carbon. Of the over 400 programs within the legislation, over half of them are relevant to SPC in our region. Another significant change was the sharp increase in the number of new discretionary and competitive funding programs. And so in response to those new opportunities, our commissioners have asked staff to play a leading role in applying for them to ensure that our region is receiving its fair share of dollars, and to determine if regional applications are worth considering, or if there are additional partners out there we can support and help in their own applications. So, and finally, we've noticed every funding notice from this administration has some common themes: equity, resiliency, and workforce development and demands. So we're concentrating on hitting those themes in our applications. And next slide. So I'm going to get into what some of us have been working on for the past 10 to 11 months in response to all that. Go through a couple of the applications that we made on behalf of the region. The first up was the Multimodal Project Discretionary Grant Program. We made an application for $128 million on behalf of SPC, PennDOT, and Pittsburgh Regional Transit for a project that goes both on the Parkway East and the Martin Luther King East Busway, two pretty important corridors in our region, regional corridors. On the Parkway East, the application included technological upgrades related to incident management, also taking care of a flooding problem in what's affectionately known as the bathtub area on the westbound section of I-376 near downtown, And there are things like signal improvements along parallel corridors and also sidewalk and pedestrian improvements on Business 22. For the East Busway, a lot of the application focused on state of good repair, items like paving, drainage, slope stabilization, retaining wall, and I think 7 bridges, if I'm not mistaken, were also included, 7 East Busway bridges. The application, transit-wise, also included a new ramp to the busway from I-376 and battery electric buses and charging infrastructure for Pittsburgh Regional Transit. We also applied to the Bridge Investment Program, the BIP, with a $73 million application. That included replacement or rehabilitation of 8 locally owned bridges in our region that are in poor condition. The application included 2 City of Pittsburgh bridges, 3 Allegheny County owned bridges, 1 bridge each in Westmoreland County, Fayette County, and Butler County. We hope to hear on that one very soon. We will be looking for, these programs, these discretionary programs are going to come out every year now for the next 5 or so years. And so we'll be looking for local bridge candidates for next year's round as well. And we'll be discussing that with the other counties that weren't included in this first application. There will be future needs within Beaver County, as 11% of the bridges are in poor condition and 53% in Beaver County are in fair condition, or only in fair condition. So still have needs, and we will be talking about future bridge investment program applications. Next slide, please. So we also applied for the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. We made a $41 million request in an application. There were 29 projects on corridors and main streets with a demonstrated need for safety improvements. We reached out to member counties and transit providers to solicit project needs and ideas from across the region. In Beaver County, we included the Broadhead Road 5 Points intersection improvement. In the application, we put in $4 million for preliminary engineering and final design. There were a number of improvements identified for the 5 Points intersection in a Broadhead Road corridor study that was completed by Beaver County and SBC jointly. And so in our Safe Streets for All application, we did include money to get that. There were significant improvements that came out of that study at that 5 Points intersection. We're talking about, a project that it could be in 20 million, 25 million or more. So we asked for preliminary engineering and final design dollars within that safety application. And then we also applied for the National Telecommunications and Information Administration's Enabling Middle Mile Broadband Program. That's a mouthful. So in partnership with DQE Communications, this application included construction of nearly 170 new miles of fiber within proximity of 16,000 homes and 117 community organizations to reach over to improve broadband access to over 37,000 people. One of the routes in that application was a 16.8 mile fiber route located in the southwest corner of Beaver County that would potentially improve broadband access to over 1,500 individuals and 600 households. We received a lot of support from county staff on this endeavor, and we appreciate their support. Next slide. So, the need for high-speed internet connectivity. It's greater now than it's ever been before. I think the emergence of the COVID virus, has forced us to rethink the way critical services such as education and healthcare are delivered. And indeed, it's forcing the transit providers to kind of rethink their service planning as well, because COVID had quite an impact on transit. During the development of SPC's long-range plan, the provision of broadband to underserved and unserved communities emerged as one of the region's leading needs. And at least at SPC, we view high-speed connectivity as an essential form of transportation moving forward. And our broadband plan examines the current true state of the region's broadband connectivity in relation to the region's demographic and socioeconomic composition to ensure its recommendations help to equitably serve the region's most vulnerable populations who are unserved or underserved by current lack of connectivity. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Jen Lasser, who's our Director of Economic and Workforce Development. She's going to talk a little bit about economic development activities.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. Jen Lasser, Director of Workforce and Economic Development, going to talk a little bit about some of the activities that we do. I think this will be a repeat for a lot of you, but it's an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what we do. Back in 2019, we combined our SEDS and long-range plan. Next slide. And so wanted to talk a little bit about kind of this side of the house, if you will. So the economic development side of the house, in addition to being your regional metropolitan planning organization, we are a local development district, an economic development district. And this is responsible for the creation, update, and submission of our SEDS plan, which is included with Smart Moves as the long-range plan and SEDS combined. And so what makes us slightly different on this side of the house, if you will, outside of transportation, is that we are a 9-county region, same as the transportation side with the exception of Lawrence. And so basically same type of activities where our goal is to build a competitive economy, manage environmental resources, create world-class infrastructure with healthy, livable communities. And why this is important is that your SEDS long-range plan alignment is usually required by most grants with any economic or workforce development focus. And the team here provides a lot of services to our small businesses, nonprofits, and government organizations with the ultimate goal of enhancing regional competitiveness here in southwestern Pennsylvania. Next slide. So some of the services under this team here is, again, SEDS planning, but we're also your regional liaison to several state and federal agencies such as the Appalachian Regional Commission, ARC, the Economic Development Administration, EDA, and DCED, which is Department of Community and Economic Development under the state. So we do a lot of stakeholder engagement and convening, and we do a lot of small business support through a program called Partnerships for Regional Economic Performance, or PREP. And so under PREP, we're actually your program administrator. And this is a tremendous program, and you'll see on a slide coming up of all the type of activities that our partners, such as small business development centers, economic development organizations, chambers, workforce investment boards, et cetera, kind of put together. And 3 key components under the PREP program here in-house is our business export. So if somebody was looking to start exporting their products and services overseas, we have a team that can work one-on-one with those type of businesses. We also do small business finance, and we also have staff that can work one-on-one with those that are looking to start selling their wares or their services to the government marketplace under procurement. We also do workforce planning, economic analysis, employment forecasting, and additional data services. And we do a tremendous amount of grant administration and technical assistance, specifically through ARC and EDA. Next slide. As I mentioned, the Partnerships for Regional Economic Performance, the 9-county region does a tremendous amount of work. And specifically up in Beaver County, you all do a phenomenal job supporting small business. And this is a snapshot of the entire region, but wanted to let you know that this past year, there were 170 workshops held with over 3,500 attendees. We had over 1,700 new clients. Over 3,000 clients were counseled with over 14,000 business counseling sessions. 130 loans were closed regionally. We had over 50 million in increased sales. 560 jobs were created, 2,100 jobs were retained, and 150 business startups were created. And so again, this is very much a thank you to Beaver County EDO and the small business development centers that service this region. So I really appreciate that. Next. And so, as I mentioned, economic development, our grant support is a large portion of what we do, especially right now, as there's been a tremendous amount of dollars that were released under EDA, ARC, and several other funders. But this past year alone, we had over 30 applicants to EDA grants with over 200 million in grant requests. We actually, as a region, were one of the few award winners of the Build Back Better grant, which ended up being it was a $90 million grant that was reduced to about 61 million, and is going to focus on robotics and automation industry cluster here in southwestern Pennsylvania, and again has that rural and urban component, the equity component that Dom had discussed earlier. We had 28 applicants with over 14 million in grant requests to ARC this past year, and we had 2 applicants with a combined total of 100 million to National Science Foundation type of activities. So really wanted to just let you know that, working hard to provide over a tremendous amount of technical assistance to $300 million worth of community development and technical support regional applications. And again, this is going to be your municipalities, your counties, your educational entities, and your nonprofits. And those were some of the activities that we did in 21-22. Look forward to working with you. And if there's anything we can do on the economic development side, we're here to help. So any questions that you have, please let me know. Next slide. And thank you for your time.
Okay, I think we did enough talking. We kept it under an hour here. I don't see any questions in the chat box. I guess I'll open the floor first to Joe West from Beaver County Planning. And anyone who wants to speak, maybe perhaps just raise your hand. If you just use the raise hand there at the bottom. And any questions? Joe, you have anything you'd like to add?
At this moment, Beaver County will be embarking on in a few months on preparing for a comprehensive plan. So everyone probably on the call probably have some involvement with it. Even as I speak, we are from bringing in a package of bids, I should say, hosting bids and everything else, and looking at potential consultants. So just to update everybody, in 2010 we did a comp plan. At that time, no one knew anything about Marcellus Shale. So now, so this one coming up, I'm gonna have that element in it, and so it's gonna be a lot of different. We'll look at things a lot differently in the county and everything else, and it'll be quite interesting. So but that's where we at. Anyone have any questions for us?
Oh, thanks, Joe. That's good to know. We look forward to working with you on your comp plan, and looking forward to working with you on our overall long range plan. So any questions out there or comments? I don't want to start picking on people. All right. Well, there's still, if you don't have a question at this moment, there still will be an opportunity to make comment or give feedback. As Rhonda mentioned, we still have. You want to put that slide back up, Rhonda or Ryan? The comments at SPC Region, I think it is. There it is.
Do you see it? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Right there.
Is that the one?
So again, you can, if you don't have a question tonight and you think of a question later on, please email it to comments@sbcregion.org, or to Rhonda herself, who's organizing the feedback from this set of meetings at rcraig@sbcregion.org. With that, I think I'm going to say thank you to everybody for participating. Really appreciate you attending tonight, and we will see you probably sometime in April with a draft plan.
Thank you all for attending, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Beaver County.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Hey there.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.